everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good evening, Mike. I'm excited to be on. Always excited to be on. Let's talk some boxing.
All right, and we'll start off with the Premier Boxing Champions card Friday night. I think it was in Pennsylvania. Started off with Kermit Cintron, technical 5-round draw with David Grayton. Cintron was knocked down in the 5th round. Where does Cintron go from here? I assume there'll probably be a rematch.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say how Cintron. I know Cintron's disappointed in the fight. I mean, I saw his post on Facebook saying, "Hey, sometimes stuff happens." It's just hard to say. I mean, it'd be nice if they did get a rematch and then kind of smooth things out and let us know where they're both at. But it's really hard to say. I don't know if Cintron just wants to move on from here and try to get the big fights, or if if that's what the avenue he wants to pursue. It's tough to say.
Yeah, we need to get him on the show to talk about this fight too at some point. But
yeah, we do.
Hopefully he can get a rematch, take care of that. The main event on that card was Travis Kauffman, upcoming heavyweight against Amir Mansour, who I don't think can be called up and coming anymore, but he's a tough guy, and he got the majority decision. I think that was kind of Kauffman's backyard. Mansour, I think, was impressive, and it was actually, from what I saw, I don't have Bounce TV, so I just saw the highlights, but, I mean, it looked like a pretty good fight for heavyweights.
Yeah, it did. I mean, from what I saw, they both landed some pretty big shots. Mansour just seemed to have a bit better footwork. His pace seemed to be a bit higher. Kauffman just couldn't quite keep up, especially down the stretch, and I think part of that is Mansour's experience. But it looked like a good fight, and PBC's done a rock-solid job of matching these heavyweights of late. Kudos to them.
Yeah, and I think Mansour, I mean, he was calling out Deontay Wilder afterwards. I would like to see Mansour take a shot at Wilder. I mean, Wilder, his competition from Gerald Washington to the guys he fought before that hasn't been that good. I think Mansour would actually be a step up from what he's been fighting.
Well, yeah, he's a southpaw, so I think that's a bit of, that adds some intrigue as well. I mean, I know the Polish guy that Wilder fought was a southpaw as well, but Mansour's a big hitter. I think he's a bigger hitter than the Polish guy that he's fought. So it would be interesting. And not only that, Mansour, he's 42, 43 at the moment.
Yeah.
With all the guys Wilder's been giving a chance, like an old Chris Arreola, I don't think Mansour's a half bad fight.
No, Mansour deserves the shot more than I think a Gerald Washington or a Chris Arreola for that matter. So hopefully he'll get it. I doubt that Wilder will get anywhere near him, though. I think Mansour is too tough a fight for the amount of money and exposure that Wilder would get.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? I mean, Wilder's got to get on it. I mean, Mansour, to his credit, he's been winning. I mean, he's stuck with it. I mean, this is a guy who could have easily fallen off years ago. I mean, he's certainly way past the age that most heavyweights, find effectively. Find their effectiveness in the ring. But I think it would be a good fight, and seeing as they're both PBC guys, it's easy to make.
Yeah, most definitely. I just don't think it's going to happen. Hope it does. But we'll move on to Saturday night's pay-per-view card, which actually, it's about as close as you can get to being worth paying $65 for. Started off with Bryant Cruz, who's a young fighter, looked really good at a TKO in 8 rounds over Ryan Martin. What was your take on Cruz?
No, I think you've got the result backwards. Ryan Martin TKO'd Bryant Cruz.
Oh, man, I got that ass backwards, didn't I? All right.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, you got the names right.
But Bryant Cruz right now is telling everybody, see, I won that fight.
Did you hear the Grueling Truth last night? They said it. But, I thought Ryan Martin looked pretty good. I mean, he's a tall, rangy guy. His power was pretty good. It wasn't great. His hand speed was solid. He understood distance pretty well. And there's a reason I spotlighted him in an article that I had written recently. He's looked good in the little fights that I've seen so far. Unfortunately, he just doesn't. He looks like he could pack a little punch, but he doesn't sit down on his punches all that well. He has a tendency to slap sometimes, and he'll get by with that against lesser opponents who have slower hands. But against upper echelon type guys, it's just not going to work. But it was a good performance. he easily outclassed the guy.
Yeah, and I would like to say that would be my secretary's fault for writing that result down wrong. The only problem with that is I'm my own secretary, so it was my fault. So I apologize. But, yeah, Martin needs to sit down on his punches. The good thing for Martin is he's still young. I think that was his 18th fight. I think he's like 18-0 with 11 knockouts now. So I think he does have a bright future, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it was a scheduled 10-rounder. He got in, he stopped him in 8, so he got in some rounds. It's good learning experience for the guy. I look forward to seeing him fight in the future.
All right, and then we had, of course, Roman Gonzalez, lost a majority decision. Do you agree with the decision? It seems like most people don't, but it was a hell of a fight, too.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic fight. I mean, regardless of the controversy, we got to give both men credit for, putting their stick in their necks out on the line and creating such drama for all of us fans. But I've heard a lot of talk lately of, robbery and whatnot, and I just don't see it that way. I mean, I thought that Roman Gonzalez had big rounds. I mean, when you look at the CompuBox stats, it favors Gonzalez heavily. Unfortunately, I don't think those stats are accurate. I mean, I know Gonzalez landed a lot of good, accurate punches, but it said that he landed 100-something more punches more than Rungvisai, and I just don't buy that. I thought Gonzalez worked hard, but I think the rounds that he won were big rounds in his favor. But to me, the southpaw, the Thai fighter, he just worked really hard, especially in the first round. He came out swinging, ended up dropping Gonzalez. I mean, Gonzalez wasn't seriously hurt, but he kept working. I mean, he was working hard. He looked like a harder puncher, in my opinion. I've never seen
and this was a fight going in where Rungvisai, I mean, if you looked at look at him on BoxRec. I mean, he's beaten multiple guys with 20 or 30 losses. I think his last 2 wins were against guys in their pro debut. But I will give a shout-out to a Grueling Truth writer. That would be our Asian boxing writer, Scott Graveson, who, before the fight, picked Rungvisai, however you say his name. Everybody knows and listens to this show. I'm not real good with names, but Rungvisai, I mean, he picked him to win the fight. And I had Rungvisai winning the fight by a point.
Yeah, I had him winning too. I mean, I've never seen Roman. I knew that the extra weight would hurt Roman Gonzalez at some point in time, but you could see that it really affected him in this fight because whenever Rungvisai landed punches, even on the gloves, it moved Gonzalez. He constantly had to reset his offense because of that. And you could see that Roman Gonzalez was troubled by his power. I mean, Gonzalez is a tough guy, but I've just never seen him so ineffective offensively as he was in this fight. And I don't see the controversy. I thought Rungvisai won. Hopefully they'll have a rematch and then, can add a little clarity to the situation.
Well, I can see this. I can see a controversy. I can't see where it can be called a robbery. I mean, the fight was a close fight. Could have went either way. I mean, people throw robbery around anytime they think somebody beat somebody by a point and they don't get the decision. Rungvisai fought a great fight, and my problem with it is this. I mean, even if you had Gonzalez winning a fight, I don't think it could have been by more than 2 or 3 points. And I think with Rungvisai, I mean, if you'd have said going in he'd have lost by 2 points, you'd have thought he fought a great fight. And the problem is when people start throwing the word robbery around, it kind of steals what Rungvisai did in the ring that night. And, I mean, hopefully I'd like to see a rematch because it was a great fight. But for Chocolatito, I mean, I think he needs to drop down to 3 pounds and go back to where he was.
Yeah, and I've been telling people for a while now that, just a little weight jump is going to hurt Gonzalez. I mean,
especially when you're at that weight. I mean, it's not like he's 140 and, he moves up 3 pounds. I mean, 3 pounds is a big deal when you weigh what these guys weigh.
Yeah, and not only that, when you fight aggressively, it's one thing to be a sticker and mover, like Mayweather, where you can come in light and your speed's not going to hurt from it. But when you're Roman Gonzalez and your style is predicated on strength and wearing guys down, it's just you could see that he wasn't the stronger man, and I think that's what hurt him against Cuadras as well. But, yeah, I'd love to see the fight. Unfortunately, a lot of people are trying to steal, Rungvisai's thunder. Kellerman did a little bit of that. But, hey, congratulations to him.
Yeah, and you talked about Quadras. Almost forgot about that fight. What was your take on that one? That was another solid fight.
It was a damn good predecessor to the Roman Gonzalez fight. And I want to say, actually, that I wouldn't have known, but Scott, again, he talked about the Quadras fight, and Rungvisai actually fought Quadras not long ago, and he was doing really well in that fight. So I think a lot of us, because we ignore the Asian scene, have a tendency to just, think, oh, hey, well, the Thais don't travel well. They're probably good fighters, but raw. But, yeah, I watched a little bit of the fight beforehand, and you could see Rungvisai was a solid fighter. But anyways, on to the Quadras fight, the David Carmona bout. I thought that was a damn good fight, too. I mean, Carmona really came – he looked like a damn good fighter, world class, really. I mean, he was able to bait. What was so effective about his style was, unlike Roman Gonzalez, who kept coming right at Quadras, Carmona made Quadras come to him. So he was able to set traps, land some counter punches. He landed hard to the body a good number of times, and you could see that Quadras felt it a time or two. I thought he was hurt in one of the middle rounds. I can't quite say which one it was now, but it was a damn good fight. And I had Quadras edging it, but damn good fight.
Yeah. And now there's talk that Quadras maybe fights Rungvisai. Do you think that happens, or do you think you're going to see a rematch right away with Gonzalez? I would think if Gonzalez is going to stay at that weight, he's going to get a rematch just because of who he is.
Yeah, I mean, even though Gonzalez lost, I still think he's the money man here, so I think he gets whoever he wants. And I think because the Rungvisai is the only blemish on his record, I think that's who he aims at first.
Yeah, and I think he almost has to. He has to erase that loss to get back to where he was. Or I don't know if he can ever get back to where he was from being undefeated and considered number one pound for pound, but I think that's a fight that he has to go after. And I think Rungvisai, the style with which he fights, is always going to be hard for Gonzalez at that weight.
Yeah, because he's big, he's strong, and he hits hard. I mean, he's like a real poor man's version of Manny Pacquiao. I mean, he's a good fighter. I think Gonzalez could potentially take the rematch. I just think Gonzalez is the better fighter overall. I think he's got the better skills. I think he's probably got the higher ring IQ, but they might as well make it.
Well, now we go to another fight, the main event, Gennady Golovkin. He lost to Daniel Jacobs, I thought. But once again, I don't think it was a robbery. I think it was a close fight. I had Jacobs winning by, I think, 2 points. But I think people throw the robbery around way too much. But this was a solid fight. My only problem with Jacobs is I think in the first 5 or 6 rounds, if he throws more punches, he would have won this fight.
I agree. I definitely agree. I mean, I think that's where he faltered. I mean, a lot of people saw Danny Jacobs come on strong late, though the 12th round seems kind of was, a lot of people seem to score it for Golovkin, but there was also a lot of people who scored it for Jacobs. So the 12th kind of seemed to be up and down in terms of scoring, but I agree. I mean, Jacobs had a good strategy. He was real damn big. I mean, he skipped the IBF next day weigh-in, and Victor Conte did an interview with the Ring Magazine, and he said he was 175 the morning of the fight, and expected him to be at least, 178, 180 going in. And you could
Victor
see that
Conte,
he was
huh?
Yeah. And
so was he working with Victor Conte?
He was actually training in Victor Conte's gym in California. Conte runs the Snack System gym, which has become quite popular, and it's been a mainstay of Vanes Martirosyan and a good number of other fighters. But you could see that wherever the hell he was training, it looked like it did him some fucking good, because, I mean, he not only was he really big, but he was really quick and he hit hard. I mean, that was the best Jacobs that I've ever seen. And you can see that, like you said, if he implemented that strategy, if he just let his hands move a bit more in the early going, he probably would have won. I think he was just, however, a bit wary of Golovkin's power. I mean, you can see that, no matter how big Jacobs was, it only took one punch from Golovkin. I mean, that's all it took in the fourth round when he dropped him. From what I saw, and what I think is widely ignored here, is Gennady Golovkin's use of the jab. I was watching the British feed, and they almost completely ignored it. I mean, Golovkin was beating to the jab consistently, and he kept snapping his head back. And, when you look at punch stats, and again, punch stats aren't really used to determine the winner of a fight. They can only help. You see that Golovkin, did as I said. He consistently out-jabbed him. But, yeah, I mean, Jacobs finished strong, and it was a fantastic performance. Maybe I'm going to have to rewatch the fight, but maybe a lot of us are giving Jacobs a little more credit than we should just because he did better than we expected.
Yeah, and I think if you look at history, Doug Jones and Cassius Clay, fights like that, Jimmy Young and Muhammad Ali, fights where you think somebody has no chance, and then when they do something, just like Duran and Hagler. I thought Hagler won the fight fairly easy, but Duran put up a better fight than people thought, so I think that he got the credit more when it came to a closer round.
Right. You see that time and time again. I mean, especially Jacobs, because you look at the Ring magazine again, and out of, 22 writers that they polled, 21 of them had Golovkin winning by knockout. Only one guy had it going the distance and had Golovkin winning. I mean, that's pretty I don't often see that sort of unanimous prediction from a source like that. So, again, I'm going to have to rewatch the fight, see if maybe I missed something, see if, we were just being swayed too much by the commentary. But it was a damn good performance by Jacobs. Unfortunately, he's not going to get the rematch, at least not immediately.
Well, I don't know. I think it could happen because I think this. Another thing that came out today, I think the pay-per-view buys on it were only like 150,000.
That's really low.
Yeah, that's what I read. That was from a Ringside Reporter and a few other places I saw where the numbers were really low. It would not surprise me if Oscar De La Hoya decides to wait a little bit longer even. And, I mean, the thing is this. A lot of people are saying now, well, Canelo would whip Triple G's ass because of this. I don't think so, because Daniel Jacobs, I think, would manhandle Canelo. I think he's too big. I think he's got quicker feet. And I think the difference is this. Jacobs is a counterpuncher, which made Golovkin come to him, where Canelo, I think, is more likely to go right in against Golovkin, and I don't think he's strong enough. And even though I think Golovkin is slipping, I would still favor Golovkin in that fight.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're right. I mean, you said this before. You think Jacobs is potentially a greater threat to Golovkin than Alvarez is, and I think after that fight, you may be spot on. I mean, because like you said, Jacobs is just quicker. I mean, Alvarez. I think Alvarez is a good counterpuncher. I think he's got solid defense, but when you compare his foot speed to Daniel Jacobs, I don't think there's much to compare. Honestly, I mean, Jacobs is clearly the more nimble of the two.
Yeah, I think as a technical fighter, I think Jacobs is worlds ahead of Canelo. Not that Canelo's bad, but I think Jacobs is a really good boxer.
Yeah, and I think he showed that. The thing you also mentioned is Golovkin, slipping a bit. I think maybe we ignored that factor as well. I mean, I mentioned it before.
Well, the Kell Brook fight, I mean, where he looked, because there was times in this fight where it looked like his punches were like a split second later than what they should have been, which is a telltale sign of a 35-year-old power-punching middleweight starting to slip, I think. Well,
and not only that, he didn't pull the trigger as much as he used to. I mean,
well, that's what I mean. You see it, but you can't deliver on it. Because I don't remember him ever throwing this few punches in a fight.
No, me neither. I mean, you look at the Martin Murray fight, people would say, oh, hey, well, he's a come-forward fighter. He typically throws bombs. He's typically his motion is so concise that he really doesn't waste a whole lot of motion. So, I mean, his stamina's good. I mean, if you watch the Martin Murray fight, he went 11 hard rounds. I mean, he threw a lot of punches in that fight. I think he threw something like 800 punches, which is, a greater work rate than Alvarez has ever had. So, yeah, I think that's something that we've widely ignored, and maybe it sounds like an excuse to some, but when you've had damn near 400 fights, in terms of amateur and professional, and you're 35 years old as an aggressor, it's one thing to be Bernard Hopkins or Floyd Mayweather Jr., or guys like that. It's another to be an aggressor. And Golovkin, you think about it, really your physical prime is, 26, 27 years old. I mean, he's, damn near a decade after that.
Well, I'm 48, and I'm pretty much thinking my physical prime's probably 50, so I haven't reached it yet. But some people are different. And the other thing is this. The reason I'd still doubt it is with the pay-per-view buys, if that report from Ringside Reporter and a couple other places I saw was correct, I mean, De La Hoya is going to try to use that to screw Golovkin out of more money.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I've already heard the excuses from De La Hoya. I mean, he said it already. He said, well, after this fight, the likelihood of Golovkin-Alvarez being made is less. And that's what he was saying. He was like, Alvarez is clear the A side, and that's fine. I mean, we all know that Alvarez is the bigger sell than Golovkin is. That's fine. I just don't think. I don't think he can sit here and say that there's a bigger fight on the horizon for Alvarez. I mean, Golovkin is his biggest fight. It's his biggest challenge. I don't really want to hear the excuses, but you never know. I mean, if Oscar De La Hoya skips out in the fall, let's say Golovkin beats, Billy Joe Saunders, because that's the word around town. Let's say he beats him in the summer, and Alvarez and Golden Boy pull out. Yeah, Jacobs seems on the, like he would be on the menu.
Yeah, but then the question is, where would Canelo go?
I don't know, and that's my thing.
Because it's not like Canelo and Amir Khan did huge pay-per-view numbers, I don't think, did it?
It did better than it did decent numbers. I mean, Khan's a big sell in
yeah, but not for what Canelo was doing.
Right. Well, the thing is that it's not going to do as many sells as Golovkin-Alvarez is going to do. I mean, for me, it doesn't. It's not too relevant what Khan and Alvarez did, because Alvarez and Golovkin will do big numbers. We all know that.
Yeah. I mean, you get the Mexican audience. You got Golovkin's. I mean, I don't think that it's anywhere near what some pay-per-views could do, but I think it's up there. I think it's a fight people want to see. And the thing is this. I think if they play this right, this is a better selling point, because before the majority of people I knew thought that it wasn't even going to be competitive. But now a lot of those people, you know how people are, they see one bad performance, and they're going to be saying, well, Canelo can kill him now, and then everybody's going to pay to see it.
And people are saying that. They are. I mean, I frequent the, all these boxing groups on Facebook constantly, and as soon as that performance was over, it was a robbery. Canelo's going to whoop his butt.
Canelo's going to knock him out. Canelo's not going to knock him out.
Could you imagine if social media was this pronounced, if it was this popular back in the day? It'd be like, James Toney struggled with Dave Tiberi. He's a bum. He's going to lose to, the next world-class fighter he faces. I mean, almost every legendary fighter that I can recall had a struggling performance against somebody. I mean, Vladimir Klitschko, yeah, he had a couple losses against some guys, but he struggled with a guy like DeVario Williamson. Like I said, James Toney struggled with Dave Tiberi. I mean, it's just frequent. I mean, you look at Bernard Hopkins. I mean, he loses to Jermaine Taylor. It comes with the territory.
Larry Holmes struggled with Tim Witherspoon, a guy nobody had ever heard of at that point.
Exactly. You can't be dominant every time out. I mean, Floyd Mayweather struggled with Marcos Maidana in the first fight. I mean, Maidana's
he struggled with Jose Luis Castillo both fights.
Right. I mean, it's the nature of the game. I mean, it's the adage, styles make fights. And this was clearly one of those cases.
And Jacobs' style would be rough on Golovkin and Canelo, and I still think Jacobs would beat Canelo. I think he would knock Canelo out. There, I said it.
I think a lot of people might agree with you at the moment. I mean, the performance Jacobs put up is worthy of recognition. I just don't want to make too much about Golovkin's performance and act like it's the end of the world. I mean, all of a sudden he's exposed and he would never hang with so-and-so and so-and-so.
It's matchups. All sports are about matchups. Super Bowl 42.
Exactly.
The Patriots are undefeated. They're playing the Giants. The Patriots' weakness that year was their offensive line was not that great. The Giants had a 6-man rotation on the D-line. That's why they won the game. It didn't mean that the Patriots weren't great. It just meant that, the style matchup was not great for them. And, they still almost won the game, and still everybody remembers that team as a group of losers. And, the thing is, it was style beat them. And here, Jacobs, I'm going to watch the fight again just because I watched the British version like you did, and I'm pretty sure the HBO version would probably sway me completely because, all those guys are cheering for Golovkin. So,
of course, yeah. Right.
But I did like the way Steve Bounce from Box Nation ripped on Max Kellerman, and the way Kellerman, talked to Rugosai, where he said he got the decision instead of that he won the fight. I thought that was pretty classless, but that's typical of Max Kellerman anyways.
Yeah. That was a bit unfortunate. I just think HBO, they've got their poster boys, and Kellerman and especially Jim Lampley, they've been doing this stuff for years. They're not bad commentators. It's just they highlight HBO's bias time and time again. And yet
they're cheerleaders.
They are. And to say Rungvisai got the decision, I just don't believe it. A lot of us felt that Rungvisai won the fight. It wasn't. It just wasn't worthy of that sort of slander.
Yeah, I'd rather hear Larry Merchant than Max Kellerman.
I wish Larry Merchant was still on. He was he was one of the few who would go against the grain.
Yeah, but that's why he's not on anymore. You had Kellerman, who's a young guy that wants to keep his job, will toe the company line, where Larry Merchant got to the point where he didn't give a damn anymore. He was going to say whatever he thought.
Yeah, and honestly, it was funny as hell listening to him go back and forth with all the fighters back in the day, George Foreman and Lennox Lewis.
Yeah, but at least he called people on bullshit. And
right.
That's the problem anymore. Nobody will call anybody on their bullshit.
Right. Everybody's too damn sensitive, and they don't want to step on anybody's toes. Larry Merchant didn't give a crap.
All righty, so that's enough of that fight. It looks like the only big fight I could really see coming up is a rematch between Jorge Linares and Anthony Crolla. What's your take there? Do you think Crolla can do anything different than he did in the first fight?
No, I don't think so. I think who will do something different is Linares. To me, Linares is the superior fighter. He will adjust, and he will put on a more dominant performance. Linares, to me, is one of the most talented guys in the last 10 years. He's really an excellent fighter. His technique is fantastic. His hand speed is great. He can punch. He's sharp. His timing is tremendous. It's just his skin is made of paper mache, and his chin isn't that great. So he suffered a few setbacks here and there. But in terms of pound-for-pound stuff, again, I think he's one of the best in the game. He looks like he's fading a bit, and he's not quite as good at 135 as he was at 126. But it's a good fight. Crolla put up a hell of a fight. He's a scrappy guy. He'll come and get it, but I just think Linares is too sharp, and I think he's got a high ring IQ. He's going to counterpunch the daylights out of Crolla, and I think he's going to stop him.
Yeah, I think it's one of those matchups where the other guy's a scrappy guy, as you said, and the first fight, Linares is going to be able to adjust off of that because he's a very skilled boxer. I don't think Crolla can do anything other than what he did in the first fight, and I think Linares wins this fight easier than he did the first time.
Yep, no, I absolutely agree. And it's good to see Linares finally. He's actually the lightweight champion of the world. Not any of this trinket garbage that so many are putting out. He is the guy by beating the guy, and it's good to see after all these years him finally achieve that goal. I wish him the best of luck.
All right, so you got any more boxing news or any fights coming up that you want to talk about?
Yeah, real quick, I just want to mention that Katie Taylor is actually on that card too. She's already fighting again. She's fighting a lady named Melina Koliva, who has 9 wins, 7 losses, and 1 draw, only 3 knockouts, a lady from Bulgaria. Katy Perry's already back fighting again. She's being fast-tracked on her way to a world title shot, and I expect another dominant performance here.
Yeah, and she is very skilled. Not she's skilled for a woman, but for a boxer, Katie Taylor pretty much has it all. I think she sit down on her punches a little bit more, but she's got fast hands, and her accumulation of punches is going to knock most women out, I think.
Oh yeah. She's a tremendous counterpuncher, or combination puncher. Her technique is real good. I mean, her hands are fluid. But I agree with you. I mean, she just needs to sit down a bit more on her shots. She's got a nice left hook to the body. She just needs to torque her hips a bit more. But she gets that down packed, and I think that's a product of the amateur game. In the amateurs, all you're doing is really touching people.
Yeah.
But in the pro game,
whoever touches the other one the most wins.
Exactly. But in the pro game, it's about damage. So she learns to sit down on her shots. She's going to be a real threat real soon.
Well, I think she's already a threat. I think she could already win the title.
Well, probably. I mean, you look at her standing already. I mean, she's only got 3 fights, and she's already rated in the top 15. So, it's not too long before she's getting something.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah. I've actually got exciting news, and it's pretty recent. But Miguel Berchelt, who we saw beat up Fernando Vargas, or Francisco Vargas.
Francisco Vargas. Okay.
Yeah, Francisco
You had one of the
Vargas.
little brain slips like I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, it was close enough. But he's actually fighting Takashi Miura. So the winners of those 2 fights from that same card are fighting one another. That's a hell of a scrap.
Not too soon, is it?
Okay, well, no, not too soon. I mean, it says that a deal's been reached. No purse bid will be involved. Let me see if they've got a date. So June 24th. So it's okay. So it looks like the initial date is June 24th. If that doesn't come off, then the second option will be July 15th. So it's not too far away.
Yeah, and that'll be a hell of a fight.
Oh, I love that fight. I mean, if that 130 has, I mean, again, I'm a fan of the original divisions, but 130 pounds has got a lot of scrappy guys in it. I mean, Salido, Vargas, Martinez, Miura, maybe Uchiyama too, even though he's on the downslide. But that's an excellent fight. That's a barn burner. I mean, that's one we should try to get credentials for.
Well, according to where it's at, whether you give me a cheap flight.
Yeah, well, we'll get it. We'll make it happen.
Well, my problem is if it's July, it's possible. If it's June, I'm probably coaching my son's elite or youth or select baseball team. So we'll see, though.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Well, I mean, there's always news. There's something that I caught. What is that? Oh, I want to mention also that Jason Quigley is fighting Glenn Tapia soon, this week, actually. He's fighting, I believe, on the West Coast. I could be mistaken there. But Quigley is a good middleweight prospect to watch. He's well-rounded. He was the only Irish he's the only Irish guy to ever win a silver medal in the World Championships, which is pretty big stuff for an Irishman. And he's just looked really good.
And Tapia's a solid opponent for this stage of his career, I think, too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Quigley's only got 11 or 12 fights, so, Tapia's been around. Unfortunately, he's on the decline after taking a couple butt whippings, most notably the one against Kirkland. But, yeah, I mean, at this stage in his career, I think it's a showcase fight, and I think he's going to look good. He's just tremendous. He might be the best middleweight prospect in the world. Him and Deverchenko are 1 and 2 for me.
All right. So, anything else? I'm tired of asking that. I'm just going to wrap it up. Unless you just, okay. I'll do this. Will you have any final words?
Final words. Well, I suppose my final words would be for Golovkin. And Golovkin has been promoted tremendously thus far in his career. I mean, he was born in Kazakhstan. I mean, there's not a big population of Kazakhs in any major city that I'm aware of. So the way that K2's been able to shape and mold this guy and market him around the world is one of the best bits of promoting I've seen from anybody. I mean, they've pretty much taken the Klitschko model, where, Vladimir Vitaly, they would fight in L.A. sometimes, they would fight on the East Coast sometimes, but they mostly fought in Europe because that's where, where the biggest ticket sales were. But I just love the way that K2 has promoted him so far. I mean, he can sell out arenas in L.A., he can sell out at Madison Square Garden, and he can sell out arenas in Monaco if he wishes. And the next fight, from what I'm gathering, is going to be in Kazakhstan, Golovkin's home country, possibly against Billy Joe Saunders. And I think this is a wonderful idea. Again, it's a great way of marketing Golovkin. It's a good way for him to get a fight in his home country before he finally wraps it up. And I'm just looking forward to what happens in the future. And that's all I've got.
I think Saunders is good enough that we'll be able to tell for sure whether Golovkin's slipping or whether Jacobs was just a bad style matchup for him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Saunders, to his credit, he looked like crap in his last outing, but when he's at his best, when he's beating guys like Chris Eubank Jr. and a bunch of other, Gary O'Sullivan and a bunch of other undefeated fighters, he's a good fighter. He's got quick hands. He's not a hard puncher, but, he has respectable pop. He dropped Andy Lee. But, yeah, I agree. He's a sharp guy. He's one of the most defensively sound fighters in the middleweight division, and it'll tell us where he's at. And I think if he is fading, Alvarez and Golden Boy, they kind of get their wish there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They waited until he was fading, and that just makes it easier on them.
Yeah, well, come on, let's face it. If you look at their last couple opponents and what they got coming up, it's not like they're trying to risk a bunch of things anyways. The Chavez Jr. fight does make sense because we know that will sell because of Chavez's name. But still, Canelo went from a guy to me that 2 years ago I would have had the utmost respect, saying he would fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. And it seems like the De La Hoya has kind of squashed that.
Yeah, and it's tough to see because De La Hoya during his career was a guy who would fight anybody. He was, even though he was a, kind of a pretty face, he was still a guy who would get scrappy. He was a guy who fought anyone and everyone. And now with Canelo, he's doing what he says he doesn't like. This
he's protecting his investment.
Yeah, and I get it to a degree, but he wrote an entire article criticizing Mayweather about the way that he's managed his career, and then he does the exact same thing with Alvarez. It's unfortunate to see, and I think part of a number of us want to see Alvarez pay for it.
Yeah, that's my thing. I want to see Golovkin kick his ass, mainly because of De La Hoya.
Yeah,
it's not that I don't like Alvarez. I think Alvarez is a good, solid fighter. I think to call Alvarez anything better than a good, solid fighter, is putting the cart before the horse. If he comes out and he whips Golovkin's ass, then I'll give it to him.
Yep. Yeah, you got to at that point.
Yeah, but then go up, beat Danny Jacobs, then we'll talk. Then you're an all-time great. But as of right now, I don't think he is. He had that shot the night he fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., and my problem with him was not the fact that he lost the fight, because everybody's lost to Mayweather. My thing was, after about the 6th or 7th round, to me, he just pretty much just followed Mayweather around the ring.
Yeah, he looked like he had one game plan.
Yeah, and to me, a great fighter is a guy that Tommy Hearns, even when he lost to Sugar Ray Leonard, when he got in trouble early in the fight, he became the boxer and outboxed Leonard until Leonard knocked him out. Well, that's a case of two great fighters having a great fight where they both make in-fight adjustments. And the thing with Canelo is this: I'm not going to call him a great fighter because I haven't seen him do something like that. It's the same thing over and over. He stalks the guy, he follows him, he knocks him out, he goes home. And when he fought a guy like Arizona Lara, he had trouble in that fight. Because Lara, fights in a style that is not conducive to Canelo, because Canelo only has one speed.
Right. And another thing, too, is in the Mayweather fight, he was clearly the bigger man, and he didn't impose his size. Instead, he was, he was fine staying at distance, trying to box with Mayweather, and it made him look silly.
And you had a guy like Marcos Maidana who tried to impose his will, even though he was, at best, the same size as Mayweather.
Right. Imagine a bigger, Alvarez probably has the same hand speed as Maidana did, and technically he's sharper. Imagine if Canelo would have went out there and tried to get him, fought in a similar kind of manner, but, he was quicker, his technique was better. I mean, who knows what would have happened? But like you said, I mean, he just hasn't shown the ability to adjust like some of the greats. His resume doesn't reflect that of an all-time great. I mean, he beat Lara. That's clear and away his best win, and even that was disputed. But he hasn't taken on a good banger yet, and the jury's just still out on the guy.
Well, to me, my problem is not even can he take out a big banger. My problem is can he take out a slick boxer? Because from what I've seen, that seems to be a problem for him, and he's never really taken on a big banger like a Golovkin.
No, I mean, he's taken on a few guys who can punch well, like James Kirkland and
yeah, but James Kirkland's skill level's nowhere near Gennady Golovkin.
Right. Yeah, he fought Kirkland and he fought Angulo, both of which were big punchers, but both of which were on the decline. And in Kirkland's part, I mean, he was inactive for 2 years. I mean, yeah. Canelo's got a long way to go before he. I mean, it might be fall. I mean, we'll know, but Oscar De La Hoya's got to make the fight.
Well, most definitely. Hopefully he will. I'm not going to hold my breath, though. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Make sure everybody checks out thegruelingtruth.net for all our boxing articles. You can get on there. You read Christopher Benedict. He had the article about Heather Hardy, who was also a guest on our show last week, which you can find on thegruelingtruth.net also. Make sure you check out Scott Graveson. I mean, everything I've seen, I think he's one of the best Asian boxing writers in this country, at least. Really knows his stuff. Like I said, he picked Rungasai to beat Gonzalez, and no matter what you think, he picked it. So you got to give him credit for that. And make sure you check out, and this is one I really like, which is John Einreinhofer, who's been doing a original 8, where, if we get the 160-pound division, you're ranking 154-pounders with them and actually seeing the original 8 divisions the way it was intended to be up until, it got bastardized in the 60s and the 70s and kind of fell apart. But he's been running. We'll have the lightweights coming up here soon. He's done probably half of the divisions. We got a couple more to go. And then every month on thegruelingtruth.net, you'll be able to find John Einreinhofer as original 8, top 10 rankings every month, which I think I haven't seen too many people do, which I would highly suggest you get to. John's a really good writer, and I think it's the way boxing should be, Jeremiah.
I absolutely agree, and I think this is a good note to end the show on. John does such a good job of highlighting how deep the divisions would be if we only had 8 divisions. And go and look at the articles yourself, okay? So oftentimes you hear 160 pounds, it's kind of weak, right? Well, imagining the 154-pound division is not around, all of a sudden now you have Lara, you have both Charlos, you have Andrade. I mean, this is a division that you look up the bottom, you got veterans like Austin Trout.
Yeah, the original 8 division thing sets every division up to be loaded. I mean, the heavyweight division, you move Usyk into those ratings, and I mean, hell, you've got a solid 5 or 6 guys in there.
Right, exactly. All of a sudden, we're not sitting here talking about why somebody. You do that. You eliminate the nonsense weight classes. You add in the one champion per division. All of a sudden, guys can't sit there and hide in weight classes like, we're not getting a bunch of Sven Odkes where they're grabbing the WBO belt, staying at home and defending it 20 damn times. This way, you have one guy, and the top-rated contender fights him. I mean, the divisions just look so much deeper the way he does it and the way it should be done. Somebody really needs to take note, and I really wish the boxing media would pick this up more, because there was a time when the Ring magazine stopped rating some of the super and junior divisions even when they were around. I mean, but
then they got Oscar De La Hoya, who, the Ring magazine's never been the same.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some bias there. It's just they just got to pick it up. The boxing media needs to pick up the baton, much like we're doing at the Grueling Truth, where we're trying to ignore, the super and junior divisions. Pick up the baton.
I'll tell you, Jeremiah, when I do research on a lot of boxers for the show and stuff, I go to BoxRec, and I would say probably 80% of the boxers, when you click on them, the picture of them is holding some kind of a title belt.
Yeah, and most of the titles I've never heard of. I mean, it's like
no, and these are guys that may have lost their last 4 fights, but the picture is them holding a title belt.
Right. I mean, everybody's a damn champion now. It's ridiculous.
But, yeah, and that will not change just because of the sanctioning fees, the promoters, they all want everything to be fighting for a title, so we're never going to get it back. But in our own little world at thegruelingtruth.net, you can find that world still.
Yes, sir.
And I think Jeremiah is going to pony up a bunch of money to see if we can start unifying some titles.
Yeah, yeah.
They can find, we need a gruelingtruth.net belt.
So let's make it happen.
We need to find a sponsor for that. We'll have 8 legitimate champions, and they'll have the 8 Grueling Truth belts.
Yep, and then hopefully we can get some guys on board, and then it will become the belt, and then we'll be all famous and rich.
Yeah, and then we'll just sell this shit and go to the beach.
I'm ready, man.
All right, Jeremiah. Well, we're going to wrap it up, guys. Make sure you check us out next week on Inside Boxing Weekly. Check out thegruelingtruth.net. Remember, you can hear all our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Music, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.